Okay, I call the Sebastian Budget Review Advisory Committee to order on March 11th for 2019. We'll start off with the Pledge of Allegiance. All please stand. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let's have a roll call, please.
Mr. Napier.
Present.
Mr. Herlihy.
Here.
Mr. Hoffman.
Present.
Mr. Hall.
Here.
Ms. Serta. Here. Ms. Ring. Here. Thank you.
And the other three, I think, are excused.
Yes.
The other three have excused absences. Okay. The next order of business is approval of the minutes. Has everybody had a chance to review the minutes?
Yes.
I'll take a motion for approval.
Motion to approve as presented.
Second.
All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Minutes pass unanimously. Review of the first quarterly report for fiscal 2019. Mr. Ken, you're up.
Thank you. Welcome all the members. This is the revised format of the reporting that we started last quarter to change the structure of some of the financial information. So this is scheduled to go to the council this Wednesday night. Because of the way the dates fell, I had to get it in to their agenda. We had, of course, we have their normal budget resolution that we presented them with an attachment showing the budget adjustments. I think we've got perhaps fewer than we're used to looking at. There were a couple that still need formal council approval. The others have either been approved by the city manager or were previously approved during the quarter. So the couple that we've got that we are submitting for their approval includes an R&R fund disbursement and a purchase of a terminal that came up because of a business opportunity, I guess you would say, where one of the tenants is taking over the fueling operation at the airport. It was pointed out to me at the bottom of the page, the appropriation from DST reserves for the computer upgrades. There was we started with a negative $30,950. We decreased the amount of that money being appropriated and should have been a negative $30,603. So there should have been parentheses around the $30,603. And Mr. Carlisle has just pointed out another one. Up towards the top, it was an appropriation from DST reserves. It was shown as $30,950 negative, which is appropriate because it's a revenue type account. But the budget after change should have also been a negative $30,950. The expense side is correct because we are increasing expense, the engineering services expense account, and should have a positive number shown as the budget after change. On the schedules, we provide for the general fund and the enterprise funds. Starting with the general fund, we do have a high unrestricted or unassigned fund balance at the end of December. Of course, that's because of ad valorem taxes coming in. Expenditures are a little bit high because we do, in October, we transfer the monies to the CRA, and also we pay some of our insurance premiums on an annual basis for during that month. So that's why your expenditures are a little bit higher than the 25% you would expect after 3 months, but we expect that will settle down. And if you look over to the forecast of the general fund reserves, assuming that we get the balance of the budgeted revenues and the balance of the expenditures, we would still end up at the end of the year. I'm forecasting that we would have the available funds of a total of $4,471,000. I do have good news. At the bottom of the page, you see the chart on the hurricane reimbursements. That was, as presented, that was the amounts we had received through December. I've gotten notice this last week that we have another $118,000 that's ready to be paid according to their website. We're just waiting for the state to process the payment. So for both Hurricane Matthew and Irma, we have only about $140,000 that's still due on Matthew that's not gone through the process to be approved yet. So we've done quite well when you think of all the money that was involved. I really don't expect the remaining 140 very soon because there was an error in the way the documents were originally submitted, and that kind of fouled up the project amounts that were considered. So now I had to submit a revision to those projects, and they basically have told me we have to wait till they close out the project, and then they will adjust it at that time. So we expect to get it eventually. Meanwhile, I've got $90,000 that came in for a project we didn't ask to be reimbursed on. I've got that in a liability account because eventually we'll have to pay back that $90,000. But all in all, we pretty much have recovered most of what we expected from the hurricanes. On the following page, I present the stormwater fund separately because now we are trying to account for that, all the operations and capital expenditures out of the revenues that come in from the stormwater assessments. I'm not seeing any particular issues with that, the way the expenses have come in and the amount of stormwater fees we collected through December. Of course, I've taken into account what we've received to date on the fees, and we are going to be pretty close, I believe, assuming we get kind of the same pattern of payments to the payments from the county to represent that same kind of schedule as we had last year in terms of how much we received after December. So no particular concerns there. The airport, they are doing quite well on the revenue side. Use some other new or revised lease agreements. We've got, they are paying back the old loan from general fund as well as paying back on a normal amortization the loans from the DST fund. So they ended this past year with $514,000 as a deficit, and that was chiefly because of the monies they owed back to the DST fund for building hangars A and hangar B. So not considering that, from a cash flow basis, they are sitting fairly well. On the golf course, if you take into account that they ran up quite a debt to the building fund, they still are coming in. They had a very good first quarter. You can see they collected about 30% of revenues, spent about 25%, and they are repaying the amounts that were borrowed from the building fund on an amortization schedule. So they are apparently able to meet their payment this year on the normal amortization. Building fund, of course, there's no issues there. Permitting is still coming in relatively strong. They show a $460,000 available cash. So that's after deducting what you know, even having the loan outstanding to the golf course, they are still have adequate cash flow. The following pages cover the more details of the account categories. Getting back then to the schedule on capital improvements. We still have listed a lot of, or several projects from prior years. Some of those are in a closeout status. About half of the ones you see from the from last fiscal year are either completed or closed out, or we're waiting for like final grant reports to know what the precise balance is compared to budget. So we'll be able to make those adjustments. Most all the negatives are in the DST fund, so it'd be a matter of switching from one project to the other to cover that. So it's not going to really have, I don't believe, any effect on the other operating funds. I provide the quarterly investment report. I've been noted that in the verbiage, I talked about the September 30th balances, but it is the actual December 31st balances. The total investments or cash on hand is $14,756,000. That's a sum of $10,500 in the local bank account, about $3.8 million at the State Board of Administration, and $511,000 at a special trust fund that's called Florida Trust. I'd been concerned about our investments with Florida Trust. It was only $500,000 that we kind of broke out and wanted to have some of our funds in a different pot. And it wasn't doing so good, but in this quarter, actually, the return, if you average it over the months that we've held it, had increased from about 46% to 0.96%. Excuse me. So I'm encouraged by that, and I can even tell you that since the end of December, the Florida Trust has even gained some additional return. So that might not have been as a bad option as I was being led to believe there for a while. The balance of the report are the accomplishments the department heads submitted, and we just did some minor editing on that and kind of pulled it all together. I would be glad to respond to any questions or any concerns that you might have.
Does anyone have any questions over the financial review? Bruce, we'll start at your end first.
Okay, we'll start here. Ken, I must admit, this is really interesting. I like the presentation. Thank you guys for the work put in.
Mr. Ken.
Just a couple of clarifying questions. On the first page of the first quarter summary, and it's probably me, but help me out. Okay, on the left-hand column, we have the general fund summary, and you have total expenditures, $3,489,251. Mm-hmm. If I go to the general fund reserve, other expenditures, oh, that's the addition coming in. No, that's the expenditures for the first quarter.
Correct.
3,439,500. Should they be different, or shouldn't they be the same number? If I'm reading it correctly, I think they should be the same number.
Well,
No, he's not having these two together.
I think where the mistake is probably in the general fund reserves that I should have shown, although it's not been spent yet. I was thinking in the R&R account expenditures, we allocated between that and the unfinished projects.
It's only,
It looks like that's the difference.
it's not even $250, it's 200 and some dollars, yeah, and
Did you see when it shows the current reserve amount, the $6,532,000? That's not counting the R&R account of 229. The sum of those two numbers is the same as I end up with as the net unassigned fund balance of $6,762,000. So I'll have to look the way I'm presenting that. I think I'm coming up with the correct bottom line.
I don't know, it's just, it's something for you to look at. Doesn't make a big deal, okay?
Okay.
Can we go to the next page? I have one question, which is part of learning to read the new things, okay? We have 4 boxes. 2 of them have budgeted beginning fund balances. And 2 of them do not.
Actually, I'm seeing the enterprise fund.
I mean, the stormwater fund summary has a budgeted beginning fund balance, right?
Yes.
But if you go over to the golf fund, there's no budget number there.
Well, it's shown as the beginning resources. That's the equivalent. You're talking
Yeah,
about-
beginning resources. Okay, so for budgeting purposes, we recognize that they don't have anything.
No, really what this is it's an accounting principle issue that with enterprise funds, you don't really have fund balance because it's supposed to be shown more like a private enterprise. So that's why I use the terminology beginning resources. It's essentially the same
Okay, so only the golf course and the airport are considered enterprise funds.
No, also the building fund.
The building fund's also called and considered, but it has a beginning resources balance.
Yeah, the 3 enterprise funds have beginning resources.
No, this was the only one that the enterprise fund does. The other 2 do not. This is the line he's looking at.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, there was not a budget for the beginning resources.
Yeah, it's just the budget, and I'm trying to figure out why 2 of them have beginning fund balances, and the other 2
Right, okay,
are beginning resources. I got it. 3, beginning fund balance,
actually what it's saying is we didn't expect to use any of the beginning balances to fund this year's budget. We had revenues equal to expenditures.
Okay.
So we didn't budget any resources, but we did show a year-to-date showing the amount that was actually brought forward.
Okay. I'll buy into that. Okay, big question for you guys, okay? The building fund summary, and I think I understand this, and we get to the bottom of your analysis, right?
Yes.
And there's due from the golf course, 1.2 million.
Right.
Okay. If assuming that 1.2 million was repaid or it exists, if we had the $1.6 million, and that's an enterprise fund, what kind of, and I'm searching for the term I want to use here, eligible investments could we make out of that 1.6 million? Define for me what I understand when the airport fund, if they've got a positive balance, we can make investments to improve the airport out of that. Same with the golf course. But what would the building fund as an enterprise fund, what are eligible investments to use for that 1.6 other than to fund everybody else's deficit?
It'd have 460,000 would be all the cash or inventory or receivables.
Yeah, but what can we do with that money?
Well, with the building fund,
the building fund doesn't have assets or
Yes and no.
few trucks and so forth.
So they have assets and vehicles and equipment, printers, even they could even be charged a portion of, and I think we do charge a portion to administration of their use of the building. The problem that you have with building departments is it's hero today, gone tomorrow. So if we were to only budget exactly what we need to run year to year and we have a downturn in permits, we wouldn't be able to operate when it started to pick back up. So you never want to run a building fund down into a net bottom zero for your budget. You want to keep a balance to carry you through as these permits come online. So one, it's a buffer against recession, and two, we don't know if it's going to have to grow and we have to fund improvements. We already have new inspectors online, but we don't know what that's going to take. When we look at what's going on with the building today and with the property that just incorporated, we may have to expand that operation. It may come a point where we may have to put them in an outbuilding. We don't know that until we see how that moves forward. But you need to be ready for that.
Okay. One more question. Police department, why are first quarter expenses so high?
Under their labor agreement, there's some payouts in December over and above their normal salary. And that has...
It's a significant number.
But some of those expenditures too were a lot of replacement vehicles and vehicles for new officers that we had to, we put on 4 new sworn officers for the school resource officers, and we had to buy cars and equipment for those.
That's right, we put on,
So when you have to buy those vehicles for those that come on, because we don't have a huge gap of spare vehicles, and I had the chief give me the list of all the vehicles so I could see if we had an abundance of spare vehicles that were usable, and we don't. So I commend the chief and her staff for being frugal with the funds, though it may not appear so in this budget. When you look at buying the weaponry and buying the armament and the body protection and the things to make our officers safe to do their job, it's not cheap, I promise you.
The other thing that happened on the salary end of it was probably a couple of terminations where they got paid out for their leave time and so forth. So that would drive up the normal comparison.
And that may not be a negative termination. It could have been a retirement or a resignation. It may not have been I don't want the term termination to be a negative.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, retirements cost money.
Departures.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Ed, you're up next.
Couple of, just comment on the golf balls. It really is a remarkable comeback. It really was a remarkable comeback. As I was reading their comments, and I happened to be out there the last couple of days just driving around, and there are golf carts everywhere. Of course, this is a peak of the season, but they must be really busy. Okay, minor question on capital. Back in before 2015, the building department made a software deal with Clear Village. I may be totally wrong, but I thought that was a deal where we were trying it out and we weren't putting any money in that pot. But apparently that isn't true. But we've gotten rid of that software, have we not?
So there's 2 parts to that question. Both of them are yes and working on it. So one is the software was not compatible with our systems, the building permit software. In other words, it would not function. We could not get the algorithms to function. So we canceled the building software. The portion of the software that was working was the business tax licensing, and that was working. The software that we just went with, less expensive, completely automated, completely integrates with our systems and allows us to do more online permitting and management of inspections online and notices to builders and residents who have that phenomenal system. And it also has a business tax licensing component of it that will do and combine all of that together as well in a one-stop shop. So if we sent a letter off to Clear Village and said, we want to terminate the building, or the business software as well, they've agreed to the termination of the existing building software, building permit software. They have not. They'll probably just be receiving that letter. So I don't want to go into too much detail on that because it could turn into some other conversations that I don't want to talk about it in a public forum at this point. I hope you can appreciate that. I'm not trying to be candor. I just
No, I understand
have to protect
totally.
the city's assets. But the software was not compatible. It was not all it promised, and it kept crashing and creating a lot of work for our IT staff and building staff. So yes, we've eliminated it. I've never heard that it was ever going to be at no cost. I don't know anyone who does that, but.
Well, supposedly it's not worth talking about now.
Sure.
But it looks as though at this point that whole exercise has cost us at least $42,000. That's what we've expended.
Yes, but it wasn't all in vain. Parts of it worked, so we didn't just throw that money away.
Right.
And it's unfortunate. You hope these things work, and you try to build a new mousetrap, and sometimes you get caught in it.
I know.
And you have to just lick your wounds and move on, and that's what we've done.
Okay. All right. Is the new software online yet?
Portions of it are. We're slowly integrating it online. And the second thing is we don't know for sure, but we think the county's going to go to the same software, so it'll be seamless for our contractors and our residents, for those who have to work in the county system and our system. Once they learn it, it'll be easy for them to work in both venues.
Good. That's it.
Andrea?
Nothing tonight.
Amber?
No questions, thank you.
Harry?
Just one quick question. On the school resource officers, does the city get any reimbursement for expenses from the school district? I know they have a categorical fund, Safe Schools, and historically other counties, either cities, sheriff's departments, will do some either full reimbursement or cost reimbursement for the expenses.
Yes, we do have agreements with the school board, both the regular school board and the charter schools for reimbursements.
Is that 50%, 100%?
It's 50%.
Of salaries, but not capital?
No, it was salaries and benefits, not capital.
Okay. So we pay for all the equipment?
Yes, sir. And just so everyone's aware, so when they're not in school resource officers, they're rededicated, if not in training, to dedicated patrols. So they're not, that's why it's a 50% reimbursement, is, you know, school doesn't do 365. So
Right.
when they're not dedicated to the school, then they're dedicated back to either their mandated training or regular patrols or police-oriented patrols.
They provide an office on campus?
Some do. It depends on where they are, but that was our agreement. They would provide office space. They would provide the cost of the training necessary for the SRO, but not necessarily for police officers in general. So it's an okay agreement. You know, we're working with the legislatures to fund it 100%. We think it's important, and so we've asked legislatures in our legislative priorities to relook at those unfunded mandates and how that affects us and the school.
Thank you.
And the only thing I'm going to say is I like the new format. I hope it's working out good for you, Ken. It's a lot easier for us.
It's not any worse, I would say that.
Okay, no other questions. We'll move on. Discussion of budget challenges and priorities by members. We'll start down at the other end. Andrea, you can start first.
Budget challenges. I would still like to see some money go in towards helping the Natural Resource Board I'm taking is doing very good things. I noticed the new jubberry out and they're trying to get rid of the invasive species. So I'd like to maybe help them all also with trying to work with not having the Roundup being put still in the lagoon. I would like to see maybe us looking for a replacement. I don't know if I think South Water District might be using it, but the St. John's is not. And, you know, we just maybe need to look and see if we have resources and keep resources out there to use less invasive material. Okay, and then the golf course, I was out there, and I think all the traffic out there is for the Pelican Diner, because every time I go there, he's full and crowded, and they're doing a good business out there. And it's good food. Good food for the money. Let me tell you, you get your money's worth out there. Thank you.
Amber?
I don't see any challenges at this point. Thank you.
Harry?
I'll keep it short. I do have one concern. Is there any possibility that some funding could be brought to the City Council as a recommendation for being set aside for some of our becoming more dangerous intersections? For instance, the B-line, power line in Barber, the intersections at the bridge there at Joy Haven and Barber, Concha and Barber. They're building some model homes now in that area. That's going to make it even more difficult for people not to get in an accident at those intersections. And I know there are a few others around town that would need it, but I'm more familiar with that area.
I'm sorry, you said Joy Haven and Barber, and what was the other one, sir?
Concha, the other side of the bridge, Concha and Barber. Traffic there, you cannot see over the new bridge that was put in. It's got a higher elevation, so you can't see the cars coming. On one side of the bridge, approaching traffic, there's a small sign that says, slow down to 25. Well, it just says 25. Nobody ever sees that sign. The opposite side of the bridge says 30 miles an hour. Didn't quite understand that. It used to say 25, but when they replaced the sign that was knocked down, they put a 30-mile-per-hour sign up. But anyhow, it is dangerous. It's been brought up before in the past, and because of that, I'm afraid that something might happen there, and a lawsuit could entail that says, hey, the city was aware of it because it's been brought up several times. So just wondering if it could be looked into.
I have to interject here. So none of us are lawyers, and we have to be careful when we make those statements. And I don't mean to, but when we make those statements saying that the city knew about a danger because we don't, you bring up a concern. So I just caution you when you say those things that someone could say, oh, you were pointed out that it was a danger. That's an opinion. So we need to make sure that we be careful that we don't say things, we don't have any accident records and that. We need to make sure that we be careful on how we say those types of things.
I'm fine with that.
Okay.
I just,
thank you.
I would really like it to be looked at.
I appreciate it, and we'll definitely look at those. I can tell you that, you know, in talking about your intersections and what we've done, there was a wreck out at Laconia where it's one way, somebody either impaired or had a medical condition. That isn't a reason to go and change all the signage, but what we did observe out there by going out and observing based on the residents' complaints was people would come to that one way and go, oh no, and stop and back up and turn around. So we redid the signage there. We're still working on it where we made a four-way stop and did some things to alleviate that conflict there. We still don't believe it was a safety issue. We believe it's driver error, either through impairment or through a medical condition that caused those last two accidents there. But based on site observations, we made changes that we felt would make it more accessible or more noticeable for people who live there and visitors to know that that was a one-way street they were coming to. So we don't always look at it as an imminent safety concern, but more of an opportunity to provide a deterrent for people going and doing the wrong thing.
Well, those intersections I brought up, I'm not sure if it's a signage situation or, I don't know, mirrors, anything. You know, I'm not sure what's out there. I'm not a traffic engineer, but something really needs to be looked at because you cannot see And if you pull out, sometimes you have to gun it to keep from getting broadsided.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that, and I haven't, I've been through those intersections and haven't looked at it through your eyes, but now that I've been made aware of it, I'll go out there and look at it and see if there's some signage, because I'm not opposed to proper signage. It's all about educating and informing the public, so we'll take a look at that, absolutely.
And like I said,
Could I,
they are now putting, I think it's Adams Homes is now putting a model home right on that very intersection, which is going to,
I would
add
like
to
to
the problem.
interject in here that Mr. Watanabe, when he was our city engineer, did a study of that intersection, and it might still be on record, and they found out that the traffic did not warrant anything.
Well, I
They
disagree.
made a study out there at that intersection.
As some of our members here would tell you, he did an incomplete study on that and really didn't follow up on it like the board had asked him to, but we, most of us agreed not to bring that up. Going forward, I'd like to see something done.
Yeah.
That's all I have.
That it? Ed?
Get the microphone going. Revenue. Most of the time, we sit up here and we talk about expenses. But let's just briefly, looking forward, talking about revenue. Basically, correct me if I'm wrong, we've got two major revenue generators in the city, the golf course and the airport, that generate revenue with third parties. Yes, third one would be the building department, generates revenue. But the airport leases space to third parties. And what I'm talking about, looking into the future, is should we be more proactive at the airport about leasing areas, land that we've talked about in the past over and over again, and we prepared a piece on East Airport Drive. We got rid of all the dirt piles. Part of it's taken up by the pickleball court, but there's still extensive property there ready to be leased. But possibly it's the world's best kept secret because there's no sign that it's for lease. I don't know as we say anywhere that it's for lease. We have space on the west side that could be leased. If we don't get it out in the public, we'll never lease it and it'll just sit there and it won't generate any revenue for us. And the other thought is, if we're going to lease it actively, then you have to make it look a little bit more attractive. East Airport Drive is much more attractive than it used to be, but it could be made more attractive with fences and trees and things like that. Yes, it's spending money, but you spend money to make money. Do we give pieces of land to a real estate broker? I don't know the answer to that. I'm throwing this out because we could conceivably generate more revenue. Yes, we're going to build another hangar, more revenue there, no doubt about it. But if we can get more industry out there, that's more jobs. So you go round and round. That's revenue. Do we put a sign on East Airport Drive, as a development typically does, has a map on it and says, this is available. Somebody drives in, oh, look, there's a flat space, it's available. What do I do? Who do I call? If we dressed it up a little bit, maybe we're going to attract somebody. And I will say, the east side of our airport looks very nice. The west side is a little shabby. The signs are shabby. The place just looks a little decrepit. Typical general aviation airport. We're not the only one. They all, if you go to Valkyria, that's no thing of beauty. They're working on it, and so on and so forth. But you attract people by making it look better. That's just something I thought we should look forward to getting more revenue in there. The next question is, it's an age-old thing that this committee has talked about, and have we appropriated enough money for roads?
So what we typically use is local option gas tax, and that's what we utilize to do our roads. What we have done that has never been done, as far as I can look back in city records, is we've done a complete evaluation of every segment of roadway in the city of Sebastian. That was completed last month. So we know the condition and the causes of those conditions, for the most part, of every, and I say every segment, so every piece of road between stop sign and stop sign has a pavement condition index assigned to it. We hired an engineering firm to walk the roads and literally go out and videotape all the roads and walk the roads and put distress levels to every segment of roadway. Why is that important? Because we've also have on the street today a bid out for all of these alternative pavement methodologies. The typical mindset in road construction and road maintenance, I should say, has always been worst first. So you spend big dollars to fix your roads that are destroyed while your good roads are going bad. What this program allows us to do, it's called the Progressive Pavement Management Program. It allows us to spend money on good roads to keep them good and bring the bad roads up. A failed road's already failed. It's not going to fail and go to failed, it's failed. So if you spend all your money to bring that failed road up to good and you spend no money on your good roads, putting preventative maintenance treatments on them, they're going to be failed. And you end up with this walking sawhorse, but that walking score goes down. Our current pavement condition index is 75 out of 100, which is actually fair, which is pretty good. So we always talk about it. We got the worst roads. We actually don't. This is an outside firm that does it. So we know what the conditions are. We do have failed roads. We have roads that have potholes. We have isolated conditions that are the ones that we remember. But we have empirical data that says where we are. It tells us what we're going to do. So we have next year's paving plan ready to go. Stormwater's reviewing it to see if there's stormwater repairs. I'm going to send it to Indian River County to make sure they don't have to do some water main upgrades or anything under those roadways before we repave them. So you don't get, well, you just paved it, now you tore it up. Is that not going to happen? It could happen still. But we're taking steps to make sure that doesn't happen. Why this is important is because if you can manage this process, we can then look at the dollars. By this process, we can look at the dollars and see if it's the right amount. This program that the American Public Works Association called Micropaver put out, as you adjust your budget and you adjust the processes, you can see if your pavement condition index goes up or if it goes down. And that'll tell you if your money is about right, if it's too much or if it's too little. And that's what we're doing for this program. It's in its infancy stage. We don't have all the data in there yet, but the data we do have looks fairly good. So with that number, I would say this year the budget, the estimated engineering budget is $510,000. We have about $400,000 budgeted. I can tell you that I looked at his numbers with the paving alone, and there may be some ways to, depending on how this bid comes in, to get us within that sweet spot. We may need to change the methodology and adjust those numbers to get within budget. But we'll know if we're budgeting enough or if we're not as we get this program completed over the next few months.
I can only say one word: terrific. After all of our conversation, I've been here close to 10 years on this committee, and every year, conversation over and over and over again, and we've gotten better. But this is a major step to me, it's the major step to solving the rest of our problems over a period of time. That makes sense.
Sure.
Yeah. So we're going to own the software, and
we already do.
We already got it. Yeah.
We pay like $2,600 a year licensing fee to access it. Nothing.
No. And this is software that's running all over the country?
That's right. American Public Works Association put it together. And so what happens, it's a 6-year program, it's divided up in 6-year programs. Every 3 years, you reevaluate the roadway infrastructure system, assign a new PCI index, to see if your formula is working or not through actual data, not just assumptions. So in 3 years from now, we'll do another pavement condition index study, and they'll come out and say whether our PCI pavement condition index went up or if it went down. If it went up, then we know we're in that sweet spot of our budget. If it remains the same, we're close. If it's going down, then we may need to relook at either methodologies or we need to look at budget numbers. But we look at methodologies first, because methodologies are how the budget dollars are spent. So those are the data. That's the data that makes this engine work. A lot of talk to say we've got a lot of data that's going to help us spend our money wisely.
May I make one last suggestion after what you've just told us?
Sure.
The public would love to know about this because you probably know, roads are always a topic. It's something, people travel over them every day and they grouse about it and grouse about it. And that would certainly go a long way with people, the citizens of Sebastian, to know that we've come that far to fix these things. And they're seeing a lot of change. Indian River Drive is, and I was amazed at how quickly that company did it. Don't let them get away. Looks like a great paving job.
It's one of the best.
Yeah, all right. So that takes care of what I have.
Bruce, you're up. Just a couple of quick questions. And I use the term, you can correct me, we have an agreement on the fire marshal situation. We don't have to budget it. We can leave it the way it is.
So currently we have, and I have to be careful because we're working with the county still. This is not done.
It's not finalized
Not
yet.
finalized yet. So the county commission voted to end the dispute resolution process and allow the city council, through the city attorney and myself and the county manager and the county attorney, to negotiate an interlocal agreement to allow the city to continue its fire marshal services. Looks promises, as you read my quote in the newspaper. I always look for amicable solutions, and I think that we can make this go forward in a positive direction. It's a communication, and it will take negotiation between us and the county fire marshal and their attorneys and ours. I'm confident that we'll come to an agreement, but you know that comes down to after the conversations start. So I can't go too far, much more detail than that. That's all public knowledge, and hopefully we can settle this out and we can move on and do what's best for the citizens of Sebastian and Indian River County both.
Okay, but no major budget implications that you can talk about.
Well, no, because we've already budgeted for the building official to be the fire marshal. We've already budgeted for Safe Build to be a contract for us, and so I think those two items are there. So as far as a budget item goes, we'll see what happens as negotiations move forward.
Okay, one more question. Will we be relocating the public works facilities to the airport?
So we have the proposal, we've got them in for a design build for a public works facility out at the airport. My team, Ken being one of them, is reviewing those. We've received 7 proposals, and we're reviewing those, and we're going to try to rank the top 3 and then bring them before council to give a presentation so the council can select the final proprietor and to do the design build. It's a multi-phase process because of the cost of it. So the first year, I think it's $1.7 million in the budget, and to do some of the designing and the engineering. And it's a complex situation. We don't really want to put a new public works complex on septic. And I've talked with Jason Brown about how we can, with the city county administrator, about bringing sewer down Roseland Road. 2 things. One, to get it to the airport where it becomes easier for people to develop and want to build out there. It's an amenity that needs to be in place, and it'll help keep us from putting another septic system so close to the St. Sebastian River. So there's complex nuances that have to be worked out in that process. And so we're working on that. But the design build is the first phase, is getting the plans and the specifications and architectural features and the office space and the mechanic spaces and all that designed, and then start the construction. So it's a multi-year process. It's not going to happen overnight.
Okay, so we're budgeted for what we need to do for that, and then in the next couple of years, right?
Well, we're budgeted for what we can afford for the first phase.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Are we also thinking,
Well, one more, the airport. Is several years ago when we renegotiated waste management, there was a supposed deal for waste management to put a refueling station out there for their trucks. That never came to fruition, right? That died?
No, and what they did is they gave the city $40,000 in lieu of building the station out there. They moved their truck parking yard at West Vero somewhere, I believe.
Yeah.
The location's insignificant, but they paid the city a $40,000 fund in lieu of building the fund out there at the airport, or the station at the airport.
along the line of that same thing, if you go ahead, when you go ahead with this whole thing, you also run natural gas up to the airport?
So I don't have the ability to run natural gas.
No, you not run it, but get Florida City Gas to think about it.
We could talk to them about it. It's a natural step depending on the uses that go there. They're not going to run unless they have the uses to take the BTUs or the amount of fuel that they need. There's other options for natural gas. If we had a single proprietor that needed it, there's liquefied natural gas that gets repressurized, and there's several options that they can do through tankers. For a small operator, it doesn't help to run a line if they don't have the usage on it.
Agreed. Yeah, if they were going to run it if Waste Management went out there.
Yeah.
But that's a big user.
Well, it would have been, because they would have done two things. Typically, when they run a fuel station, it's not just for their vehicles, it's for other delivery vehicles to convert to the natural gas that are local. And so it creates a revenue stream and a usage stream. Obviously, it's a lot greener than gasoline and diesel.
Agreed.
Okay. My number one priority, as it has been since I've been on this committee, was to fund the budget at rollback or less. That will be the number one goal for me, to see us go. I know we've done very well the last couple of years. That would be my main priority.
Thank you.
Next, review the budget calendar and discuss the next meeting date, June 10th, 2019. You think you'll have a tentative budget by then?
According to our schedule, a week before that date, we would have some kind of package with a tentative plan anyway, still subject to the certified tax roll millage rate, but we should have it roughed out.
Well, I've looked at the schedule and I think it looks fine. I mean, I don't know, there may be depending on how it goes, there may be some meetings in July we won't need to do. Like last year, if we get everything done in June. Does anybody else have any comments about the budget calendar?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
Our meeting on June 10th, is there, this is addressed to Ken, is there let's see, the very next day you'll have available, or tentatively we'll have available the budget documents for us and the city council. Is there any chance that those are available, that at the conclusion of the June 10th meeting that we could have a copy as we leave, instead of having to come back the next day to get them to review before the following week's meeting?
It's really difficult to say. It depends on what kind of issues we have to deal with or uncertainties that we still have at that point.
Now, the question is, if you have them available that evening instead of the next morning, it's possible if we have our copies then.
If it's available, sure.
Yeah, sure.
Is that it?
Yeah, the other dates, they're always a little tentative based on, so we are.
Well, we'll have to wait and see how it progresses. Maybe we can do like we did last year and do away with some of those meetings in July if we get the work finished. Any discussion? Andrea? Amber? Okay. The next topic is general discussion by members. Does anybody else have anything else they would love to add to the discussion tonight?
I'll just reaffirm, great presentation. I like the new format. Thank you. Taking me a while to get to it, but I'm figuring it out.
Mastermind right here. He's got it going on.
A number one, Mr. Kilgore.
Thank you.
Excellent.
I was motivated by the boss.
I myself like the budget presentation, the formatting. As far as my personal feeling on the budget for this coming year, yes, I agree with the chairman. We should strive to stay at rollback if possible, but I'm not as rigid on that. If there are city needs, I feel they need to be addressed as long as they're within reason, regardless of the rollback that everybody strives for. Sometimes that could be a hindrance to getting things done that are needed throughout the city, especially if you go through a recession and when you come out, you need to play catch up and all. So, to me, I'm amenable to getting things done as long as they're within reason, regardless of the rollback.
Okay, comments by staff. Ken or Paul, anything else you'd like to?
I feel like I'm in recovery mode right now.
Microphone?
Yes, I'm just in a recovery mode right now because this is March, and with March comes state financial report, state pension report, of course the audit report, putting the agendas together for tonight's meeting, pension board agenda meeting tomorrow night. So I've been quite busy, and so I'm looking to
It's that time of year.
be able to clean up some things now that I have those schedules met. And we were successful. The audit report will also be presented at council meeting Wednesday night, and that's about 2 weeks in advance of when we did it last year. So I'm very proud of that part. And if I'm not out of line, I'd just like to mention that Mr. Carlisle has initiated some strategic planning efforts and tying those strategies to our accomplishments. We've got a lot of work to do on that, but we're going to get hopefully an initial start on it in this budget cycle. So.
Paul, anything you want to add?
No, I just echo Ken's words about the strategic plan. One thing you'll follow as a theme is my management style is we plan before we budget. We don't budget and then plan. Well, it's going to take time to get there. Rome wasn't built in a day. And I think as we can progress and get these things done, it's going to make everyone's life easier when you're budgeting back towards goals. So as we attended a great conference last week and came away with some great ideas on our strategic plan that I think is going to make it even easier and seamless. So as these things are evolving, it's going to help the budget process. You'll be looking at a budget that takes actions that make the plans work. So that's going to be paramount in making things move forward and letting the public know that we're good stewards of their funds. But on a great note, all the contracts are out for the pickleball, so we can get in the queue and start getting those built. So that was, that's a great milestone.
Very good.
When do they think they'll have it done?
I'd like to get it started first, but technically we're like 12 weeks out for the construction start. Because of their construction schedule, and so it's they're talking 3 months because of the wait time. So you're looking at probably 4 to 6 months before, probably closer to six or 7 months before completion of phase 1. Sounds like a long time, but it's been talked about and talked about. It's actually coming to fruition. Right. So.
Very good. Next on the agenda is public comments, and seeing no members from the public here, is there any other thing for the good of the order? If not, this meeting is adjourned.